Welcome everybody to another episode of our digital art nights here at the Brickstar Museum. For those of you who are familiar with what we do here, usually in a regular year, the museum hosts an art night every Friday in the summer or every second Friday, where we open the museum until 8 o'clock in the evening, and we welcome visitors to come in for free and enjoy the exhibits that we have going on, both art and historical, based on what we have going on that year. With the pandemic, we've opted not to stay open late into the evening, but we've decided to be bringing you these programs digitally, so you're able to either watch them at your own pace or every Friday, as we'll be releasing them throughout the summer. So I want to remind everybody that the museum is open regular hours. If you want to come in and you feel comfortable coming in, we would love to see you. We're open with limited capacity, and we always are encouraging mask wearing, as well as plenty of hand sanitizer here in the galleries to go around. So if you're comfortable coming in, we look forward to seeing you then. And of course, you'll be able to see in person some of the pieces that the artists will be talking about in the videos following my introduction here. So as I said, art nights originally started a couple of years ago, and we were open for free, and we had local artists teaching visitors about various different types of art, like pen and ink or how to create a comic book. So really fun things to do. And we'll be working on bringing some of those things to you digitally as well. So this year we're going to be posting digital artist visits, so videos, talking with local artists every Friday to our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, as well as our website. So as I said, they'll be accessible to you whenever you would like to watch them. And I just want to mention that this project is funded in part by a grant from the Maine Arts Commission, which is a independent state agency supported by the National Endowment for the Arts. So we really appreciate the support of Maine Arts Commission, especially in this process that we're all still getting used to. So as we explore artwork tonight, I hope that you enjoy. And of course, if you have any questions for the artist, these are obviously pre-recorded. But if you have any questions for the artist or for the museum staff, make sure that you put your questions below in the comments, obviously on Facebook or YouTube, and of course on our website, there's a comment section as well. And then we will work on getting those questions answered for you. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Julia Einstein, who's also in the Brickstar Museum's bicentennial show called Perspectives 2020. Julia is going to be talking to us about the inspiration for her piece, which is here in the museum collection. And you'll also notice that Julia, I'll say, has a background as a museum educator and an art educator. So you will have a whole host of things to be listening to and learning from Julia. So this is a great interview to gather everyone around and enjoy the show. Here is Julia. Welcome, Julia. Thanks for visiting us today. So you're standing next to your piece here in the bicentennial exhibit here at the Brickstar Museum. How about you start by telling us about how you started as an artist?
I was that kid that loved to draw, always drawing. I mainly pictures of my family in descending order. In first grade, I was thinking about this question. In first grade, for show and tell once, I taught the entire class how to draw Snoopy. And then I come from a family that they were painters. Everyone knows how to draw. My grandmother used to make these little toll drawings, on plates. And so I went to art school. I studied painting, I got a BFA, and then I went on, several years later, I went on and got a master's in art education. So that's sort of my background. Yeah. The inspiration part, what inspires me, is nature. So you can see it here. Yeah. That used to be that I had interior paintings. I would make paintings of an interior scene, and going through the end of it, it would always come to, say, a back wall that had a window. And I usually had a bouquet that I would set up. But I was interested in the floor and the shadows, and that's what drew me. And then I said, wait a minute, I'm really interested in this window and the bouquet that's on top of the table in front of the window. So for several years, I made what I called flower portraits. And I I always describe them as if on a stage. And so the window was the backdrop, and whatever was outside was included. And finally, I got rid of it all. I just went directly to the flower. And I'm inspired by wildness of a flower. So I'm inspired by this sort of long, leggy flowers. I'm inspired by, if I'm picking the flower either in someone else's garden, because people do invite me in, or my own. I'm inspired by the shape of how it sort of stands, and rather than say the color and all of that, or there's usually this either elegance to it or a wildness to it, and it has to do with the gesture of it, because I know what I'm after.
Right.
And then not too long ago, I started working on a whole series from the Artist's Garden. And at that point, about a year ago, I worked the entire year for an exhibition called Maine Flora. And I worked with two other artists, and we documented the inspiration, and it turned out that it was a lot of research. And so then I started to delve into the world of Maine flora, and of course found Kate Furbish, who's nearby, who tramped through the woods of Maine and found new species. And I found out about a thing called herbarium, which you stack flowers and preserve them, and she was the person that helped preserve these flowers. She drew a picture of them in a watercolor, but she also had the scientific preservation. And I started doing that myself. I thought, I'm going to do it every month in my garden. And so there was that. So just like I said at the beginning, it's the natural world, but it lends itself to all different things after that.
Sure. Oh my gosh. So I'm kind of going to guess what you're going to say, but when you saw the call for this bicentennial show, what did you find as your inspiration? I know you came into the museum and looked through our collections, and then what did you find, and what came to you after that?
It was a thrill to go to the collection. I mean, if I could I know people love behind the scenes, and it's as good as you think it is. So I walked through, and I knew I was going to go with some flora base, and so I first saw a lolling chair, which is an old chair that sort of has a broad base, and they would be called Martha Washington chairs, so
sure.
They could fit. And I liked it. I thought, because it had it was upholstered with a very pretty floral pattern. And then walking around, and I thought, wait a minute, there's really beautiful, somewhat large pieces of pottery, and it was blue pottery, and a lot of it had linear, really beautiful floral patterns. And I've been making these paintings that have this much more linear quality. I thought, that's it, that's something. And then finally came upon the embroidery piece. And then, as soon as I found out that it was made by a woman from Kennebunk, and it had a strong Kennebunk connection, I thought, that's it, that's the piece. And then the next thing, I of course got to see sort of the object information, and the description is tulip, bluebells, daisies, surrounded by a meandering wildflowers. And I said, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the idea that these are simple flowers. And so that was it. I knew that was my inspiration.
Sure. It makes so much sense after you
Yeah.
were talking about that was your focus, that's for sure. So I will note, and when you were coming in, we were talking about this with our collections manager, that this piece was recently donated in 2018. So you found it about a year after it came to the museum, which is wonderful.
I'm glad it was there.
So tell us a little bit about your process making this piece.
So when what I started doing was, the first thing I did was I took a lot of photographs of the embroidered piece, and then I started picking flowers, and a lot of them were in my own backyard. There is a Solomon seal, there's a dandelion, there are tiny bluets, which I picked with the dirt with them. These are just ordinary little strawberry flowers. This is a tiny violet. So they're just sort of the things that are really truly in your own backyard.
Sure.
But I started researching the form of these embroidered pieces, and they seem to always have these 3 parts to them.
Okay.
And I, of course, did not grow this tulip, but I went to Black Rock Farm in nearby in Kennebunkport, and I found this parrot tulip, and I decided she was the queen, and so she was sort of holding court. And once I made sketches of each flower, my studio is now filled with flowers in different vases, you can imagine. And I started to actually tack my sketches up and compose how they were going to meander around. And at that point I felt comfortable, took away the sketches, and I then stood up to the easel with what was a tiny, in most cases, little flowers, and I knew I would start. I just worked from life, and I captured the gesture.
Sure.
And then I would go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So once I got it on, it was ready to become a painting. And by that I mean that I could just fall in love with paint, right? So I'm not documenting anymore. I've gone past my, inspiration, and I can have fun. And so I knew I wanted to continue. I wanted to continue that whole idea of a painted drawing. So it's quite different than a regular painting in that I wanted to accentuate these underlying lines here. And I had a nod back to the original needlework in that I remember reading that it said the silk is a little faded, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to conserve that silk and I'm going to make it new in my painting, and I thought it's going to be a pinkish beige,
Yes, that's fantastic.
And then the last thing I really started doing is making almost like piercing the paint into the canvas, and just I wanted to really sort of activate the canvas. And then there are little parts where I just looked at the needlework, and I remembered that some of that needlework was quite beautiful. So I thought I'm just going to sort of continue to activate that surface and pay little homage to beautiful needlework in my meandering wildflowers. And And that's that. So what I really love is that they're next to each other. I mean, there's nothing like that, and that doesn't really happen. That never happens actually, unless it's very specific, like this exhibition. You know, sometimes somebody might say, "So, what's your inspiration? What did you work from?" And this show, it's right next to it. And then I just found out I was referring to this as an old easel, and I loved that as well, because it's just been, obviously history has been part of my creative life in the past couple of years. It's Edith Barry's easel, the founder of the brick store, who was an artist and taught art classes. So I thought, oh, it just makes the whole thing come full circle.
Oh, good.
So I really loved it. And I love the show. It's so much fun to look at the piece, the inspiration, and then there are little vignettes around the exhibition that allow you to sort of get inspired by how you curated, you know, put another object. It's fantastic. It's a ton of fun.
Oh, well, thank you for that review. Hopefully that'll entice people to come in and see.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of, I have a million questions for you because you are a font of knowledge, but what are you working on now?
So now I've decided that a lot of my work has sort of, I want to say, a decorative element to it. A decorative in a good way. And I'm going to say it's a decorative like Matisse, who was when I was a young kid in art school, Matisse's work really spoke to me. So I'm actually doing a whole series of pieces that are about 12 by 12, and it's sort of white on dark, dark on light, and putting them together. And then I found a company that will reproduce my work on canvas in this really beautiful muslin. And I found that it's beautiful.
Wow.
So I'm actually going to go into, I thought I would sort of go into sort of more of a decorative vein with my paintings and my work, and see if that would be something. But right now, because I have a bank of windows in my kitchen, when you walk in, there's an easel, and my tabletop is filled with all of these, what I'm calling my decorative work. And there's still flowers on the other side, and there are vases of all kinds. So that's what I've been doing this summer.
Wow, fantastic. That sounds really exciting. And last question, from my end anyway, is I've been talking to a couple of the artists who were in the exhibit. Do you notice any differences with when obviously COVID is still around? Have you noticed any differences in terms of supply, or does this quiet time allow you to kind of be more creative? Or what have you noticed different?
Well, what I know is what people talk about, and they talk about how art is important to them. And in that whole act of looking at art becomes, I don't want to use the word appreciated, but it's recognized maybe. I know that artists always work alone. Like I always would make fun of sort of like, you know, the scientist and the artist. The artist is by themselves with an easel. Scientist is with a test tube.
Yes,
you know,
that's true.
So the aloneness is perhaps something that in terms of myself, I don't mind having, you know, being by myself and sort of being reflective and all of that kind of stuff. I do know that I have, you know, sort of referred to myself as a bit of a naturalist recently, because I'm finding these little trails that I can walk on. I would usually walk on the beach or something like that, but now I'm walking down these trails and I'm noticing, you know, bushes and moss and
Right.
just the stuff I would never pay attention to.
Right.
And I think that's part of the whole, with COVID, I mean, suddenly you're either sitting someplace, you're looking, or you're walking through a new spot, or there's something else that you start to notice and you pay attention to. So that, for me, that's my takeaway.
I like that. That's a really good outlook. Take the time to actually see things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is there anything that you didn't touch on yet and I haven't asked about that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think that, you know, when you are in the studio with your work, when I am in the studio with my work, it's there, right? It's on an easel. You live with it. Yeah. Sometimes you finish your work for, say, the afternoon or for the evening. You turn off the light, and sometimes you take a little sneak back in, and you say, "That's it. That's what I'm going to work on tomorrow," or whatever. Yeah. But when a piece is elevated from your easel and from your own light, from your own palette, all of that, and comes in a space, you just give it up. And you give it up to that space, and you hope that it does what you intended it to do. And what I love is that when you have a gallery light, it picks up the things that you want it to pick up. So when people see works and come in to see the show, you're seeing the work taken out of context of the studio, but it's looking its best. So I love that as an artist, and so that's the only other thing I would say.
That's a fantastic addition and ending point. I love that you said that. That's perfect. So thank you, Julia, for coming in today, and we'll see you at the museum.
Thank you.